What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Trey Talks. This is under our new format, in which, by the way, this show is broadcasted on our YouTube channel called Glass Guy. Alongside me, longtime partner, friend, confidant, Mr. Jason Ryback. And of course, the newest addition to my Architectural Glass and the Trey Talk show is Matt Francino, right off the boat from Italia. Speaking of Italy, you guys see the Pope passed away recently.
Yeah, rest in peace.
Rest R.I.P. But without further ado, how are you guys doing?
If I was any better, I'd be a dog with two. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, don't drop that.
I will
yet.
say I am cautiously optimistic about this.
Okay.
And the reason for the caution is because I don't know if, it's not that I don't know if you can do it. I just don't know if you can get through it without somehow putting us in a compromising situation to be embarrassed.
I'm going to tell you right off the bat, Matt kind of steered us in a direction that I think has been good for the show. I'd be curious to think of what your thoughts have been. The newest show just dropped today. I'm curious to see what you think, but I can go ahead and tell you right now that you're not going to be in a compromised position, and he set the bar high. You then followed up by setting the bar equally as high, and so I want to just kind of follow suit, and I'm not trying to clown any of you. Now, if that happens to come and get on camera, I think we all win, but there's nothing like that here. So without further ado, let's just get right into this, unless there's anything that you guys need to bring up, any shout-outs, anything.
Not at all.
No.
Okay. Without further ado, the first topic we're going to talk about is the U.S. construction labor shortage as it's intensifying. I was reading recently the industry needs to recruit 439,000 new workers in 2025 to meet demand. Skilled labor shortages are causing higher wages, longer project times. Companies are investing in apprenticeship programs and targeting Gen Z workers. Construction firms are beginning to focus on diversity and inclusion to expand the talent pool. So my first question to you, Jay, is why do you think younger generations are hesitant to enter the construction industry?
Well, I think there's two reasons for that. One, there's always been kind of this underlying requirement that you have to go to college, right? Mm-hmm. All throughout your school year, school years, you thought, oh, okay, well, after high school, I have to go to college. So I think a lot of kids have that ingrained in them. But even more so, over the last probably 20 years or so, I would say that construction workers have been viewed differently. There's a little bit of a stigmatism to it, almost like, yeah, well, you're not smart enough to go to school, so you just went into construction. So I think those two things coupled together, the younger generation has a hard time kind of getting over that hurdle in really investing in a construction career.
Okay. Matt, what kind of incentives could really motivate new talent to join the field, especially with the younger generation? Don't hold back.
No. I want to say with the younger generation, it mainly might be an issue because of Jay's point about going to college and how it's ingrained in our, curriculum to make sure that once you leave high school, you go to college. I want to say that I have a different point to make on that and this is coming from someone from this generation, everyone's getting a little softer. Not only is everyone getting a little softer, I think social media has tainted our view of what success looks like. Everyone wants to get rich quick. Everyone wants to make money, especially when you come straight out of high school, you want to immediately make money, and construction just isn't that. It's, filled with a bunch of hardworking laborers. And I think that might, have something to do with the shortage, especially with my generation and younger generations. Incentives, I might not have an answer for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, I think to your point, the way this younger generation is, they are soft, you're right. And a lot of that has to do with the social media, the video games, the stuff that keeps them occupied. Whereas like someone like you or I, Keith, when we were younger, we're outside getting dirty, right? So we don't mind getting our hands dirty. But these kids now maybe have a little bit of a tougher time doing that.
The ironic thing is that getting into the construction industry now could pay a hell of a lot better for a Gen Z getting in the workplace now than it did for when you and I first started getting, because of the supply and demand issue. I would almost argue an individual getting into construction now, right out of high school, is like the new version of investing in digital stocks back in like 2000, when you had this tech bubble that was just firing off. I think we're starting to see that in the construction. As there's more and more demand and fewer people doing the work, you start to get this delta that separates of the supply and demand, and that's what's going to drive up wages, prices, and it's actually a really good time for somebody to get into construction. But both of you are right that the groundwork has already been laid and ingrained into us that that's just not the way you're supposed to go. But anybody that's looking to buck the system, I think, can really benefit from that. And so we want to always kind of be thinking of ways to entice and educate, or at least show younger generations the benefits of possibly getting into the workplace. And there's nothing wrong with that. People should not be ashamed of getting their hands dirty or learning a skill in a trade. I think it's awesome, and it's definitely needed.
And I think that education you're talking about is probably the biggest incentive to get people into the construction trade, because a lot of them don't realize the amount of money they can make, and that, it's something they can do.
And it's not going to happen overnight. You have to put, just like anything else, you have to put your time in to learn the craft to a high level. Therefore, you can garner those premiums that are out there.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think taking that stigmatism away too is a big part of it.
Yeah, it's not just for the kids that were sent to detention and smoked cigarettes in high school. It can be for anybody.
Yeah. Right.
Right. All right, so that's going to lead us to our next topic, which is impact of U.S. trade policies on construction. Tariffs on Mexico and Canada have created uncertainty in the construction supply chain. Many firms are pausing or delaying projects due to unclear import-export regulations. We've actually even heard some of these excuses from contractors of recently.
Yeah.
These policies are inflating the cost of essential materials like steel and lumber, etc. And political instability is now considered a major construction risk factor. So, Matt, to you, first question. How should construction companies adapt to volatile trade policies?
A tactic that probably wouldn't make sense for their wallets and their pockets would be, source from within the United States, because then there's no trade policies, there's no tariffs. Now that's easier said than done, but keeping their margins high enough to where they're making money, that's tricky with the situations we're in now. We're in a situation we really haven't found ourselves in a while, I think, politically and with all the trades.
I think you're right. And also, just to further on that, I think there's a bunch of small businesses out there that are affected by the higher prices due to importing stuff and or exporting that don't know how to deliver a higher cost to the end user because of their lack of soft skills or their inability to be able to negotiate at a higher level to, even... Some people just say, I could never charge a customer that. That's just too expensive, because they've been used to charging something all along the way. So maybe it's not necessarily just finding places to buy internally, but it's figuring out how to negotiate at a higher level as well.
Especially when an end user is already hesitant to begin with because they know they're going to be paying more than they quote unquote should.
Exactly. All right, so Jay, to you. Should governments consult with industries more before implementing these tariffs?
Well, obviously, it's good policy to talk to the people that it affects. Sure, I mean, you have to get all of your information so that you understand the total impact that they have.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it probably has been happening over the years, but it's inevitably going to get to this, because I think from the research I did, these tariffs have been happening for as long as we've been alive, and much longer than that. But they have been lopsided.
Yes.
And so I think this point that we're at right now was eventually going to be inevitable. And so it's our responsibility to help combat that while still keeping our business going and thriving. We have to come up with ways to be able to bridge the gap between higher price costs and people not wanting to buy, which I think we've done a pretty good job of.
Yeah.
And one thing that we could do, I think, is just more advertising, getting our name out there more prominent, because maybe we just can bring in more customers.
By the way, I want to add something about these tariffs, because I don't know how true it is, but I read this, that people don't realize the tariffs. So say we're charging a 50% tariff, right? That 50% is not on the cost to, let's say I'm importing steel, right? And my cost to import this is $10,000. I'm not paying 50% on that $10,000. I'm paying 50% on what it costs that manufacturer to make that steel. That's what I've read. I don't know how true it is, but it's just something that people should keep in mind.
Did you have something else to say on this topic? Okay. This I was kind of uncertain but it's been recently coming up on job sites, and it's all over the news, so it just seemed appropriate. This is also all over the news, the AI and automation revolution in construction. AI-powered project management tools are optimizing planning and cost control. Robotics are being used for bricklaying, demolition, and concrete pouring. Predictive maintenance tech is reducing the equipment downtime. Digital twins are now helping simulate project outcomes before ground is broken. Jay, will AI ever fully replace traditional project managers?
If you're looking at it from a project manager standpoint, I can see a time where that may happen. I think I don't know if it will fully replace them, but it will greatly decrease the amount of work that they actually, an input that they actually have. You know, it might involve, instead of a team of 10 project managers, might get whittled down to one who just kind of oversees the end result of the AI.
Right on. Matt, how do we make sure this tech helps workers instead of replacing them?
To Jay's point, he hit the nail on the head, because, I was a project manager at one time. And, AI could definitely help bring down definitely the team that would be required to, manage a lot of these projects. But there are so many unforeseen factors that even a human can't, predict, that comes up in a project that needs a human to, change their footing and make a decision quickly. You can't rely on an AI to do any of that or to foresee any of that happening. So will it replace? Now, project managers, I don't think they can ever truly be replaced without, like he said, having someone oversee it, because sometimes a human has to make that decision, because a robot's just going to, an AI is just going to make a decision on what it thinks it's best. But sometimes what is best for you in that moment isn't best for the customer, and that's all about project management. We're getting into a territory where a lot of jobs are going to be replaced, but there's a lot of jobs out there where it's going to whittle down, and there's just going to be one person kind of overseeing it all at the same time. And what does that look like? I have no idea.
I think one of the things with AI where we kind of are right now able to insulate ourselves from being taken over by it is that I don't think it has the critical thinking skills that a human has. So, in other words, a lot of times we would come across certain weird scenarios out in the field, and you had to come up with something to do it. Whereas an AI robot or computer may say, okay, well, I can only use this part, this part, this part. Whereas here we're thinking, okay, well, if we take this part and we cut it this way or drill it that way.
And manipulate, yes.
Yeah.
We just had that on that big install, where AI might have been able to plan and help get that in there, but having to replace it after the house was built, because now there's furniture, there's island in there. I don't know how we would have came up with a solution for that.
Yeah.
So,
and again, that's now. I mean, obviously the machines learn, so it's yet to be determined how much they're going to learn.
That's true. Jay, what's the coolest or most surprising piece of tech that you've seen or used on a job site?
Wow. That's interesting. That I don't know. That's a tough one. Let me think about that for a minute.
Even at your previous employment, or go ahead.
I do have one. It was because we just used some machinery the other day. We used some cranes with suction cups for manipulating glass.
Shout out Great Lakes Lifting.
That's right.
Steven and Danny, what's up?
But the one thing I saw that was really cool was they had that it almost looked like a little tank. And you could put like an A-frame on there and it would carry glass through any kind of terrain. So it would have been perfect. Guys just finished a glass railing job where it was difficult to get around the back of the house. You know, a lot of hills and sand and rocks and stuff like that where...
So for
this
anybody
machine
that
might've worked.
doesn't know what Jay's saying, we have a residential house that we're doing glass railings around the pool. We have to park in front of the house. So the house is on like an acre and a half. The house is set back off the street, let's say 100 yards. So we're parked out in the street. We got to unload glass all the way around the back of the house. The house doesn't start for 100 yards. And then the house is 50 foot long. The lanai is another 30 foot. So you got to... You know, each piece of glass is 150 pounds. So you're talking about humping 50 pieces of glass from the truck to the back of the house. It's time consuming.
It's also 90 degrees out too.
You're prone to potential injuries, prone to dropping the glass. And that machine that you're talking about would allow the guys to unload the glass onto it at the truck and then with remote control kind of drive it all the way around the back of the house. Aside from the social media optics from just doing this because it's so different, that's a game changer. And it puts the guys, because the guys, you know, when you're installing, you want to be in a good mindset and in a positive mindset so you can come up with solutions and collaborate with your teammates. And starting to work on a job after carrying, 2,000 pounds of glass around the back and being beat is not a good way to start a project. So using some of these machines, I think, helps for a better end product, not because the guys are lazy. It puts them in a better mindset because they're not just exhausted after and potentially hurt after carrying all that glass around. So I really liked it. I thought you were going to mention the dog at Suffolk because you did a piece on that a couple months ago. The Suffolk Construction has an AI dog.
Yeah, but see, I haven't worked with that. So.
Yeah, good point. Have you, even at your previous employment, seen any cool technology that was really like game changing that you're like, wow, that's changed the game?
Yeah, I would, and I'd love to talk about it, but unfortunately I can't. But what I can say is, when I used to do, little contracting work, even before that, I remember, I don't know why this is stuck in my head so much, is the first time I ever used a stud finder. Because, there were times that we would be knocking on the walls and then we would have to, you drill into the stud. Is it metal? Is it wood? Or we'd have the little magnets. And I remember the first time using a stud finder. And to some people, that's like, everyone has a stud finder, but we did it. And when I first used one, I was like, this is really cool.
They've come a long way too. They have digital screens out now. You can actually see what's
That's what I would talk about.
Okay, you're not just talking beep, beep, beep,
It has
beep,
a little
beep.
screen. It shows you exactly what's like in the wall. And I'm just like, how does this work?
Yeah.
So do you think if we went to the high schools with a stud finder, we could recruit more construction construction employees?
Very good possibility of that. Okay, this is an interesting topic. I saw this in real time when it was happening. This has to do with, it's in Thailand. By the way, anybody know the capital of Thailand? Bangkok. There was a skyscraper collapse in Bangkok, Thailand, which was raising a bunch of safety concerns. A high-rise building collapsed following a 7.7 magnitude earthquake. Initial investigations are focusing on potential safety code violations. The disaster has triggered renewed debate over construction safety standards. So, first question, do you think this was a freak accident or a symptom of a deeper industry issues?
Well, first off, did Gene Crevillian stamp off on the plans
I
for
thought
that
one
one?
of you were going to say that. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, well, knowing what we know about the Asian market, things tend to be done cheaper. And I don't know if that translates into their building as well. And maybe cutting a little bit of corners to save money. I don't know.
What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know too much on this specific story, but
Did you see it? That earthquake? Okay, so buildings were swaying. There's a couple hotels that have one of these pools that kind of cantilever off up high,
I
and the
saw-
water spilling.
Yeah.
And then in the background, all of a sudden, you see one tower going, and then it just dropped.
Yeah,
that-
what about those people were laying on a raft and the thing's going back and forth, and they got off, and 2 minutes later the raft goes over the side
Oh
of the
my
building.
gosh.
Like, holy shit.
Big time.
Yeah, I mean, it must be tricky working with earthquakes. But what that does remind me of is that's, a couple years back over, I think, in Miami, when we had that building collapse on the beach. Remember, that was a huge deal.
Yeah.
Big deal.
And it was like, whoa, is this a freak accident, or is this, turns out the guy that, was supposed to look over the building kind of ignored the signs of, a building's about to crumble. But man, that earthquake and the technology that they have in buildings, to think that there's even a sure-proof way to build a skyscraper where it doesn't tip over when there's an earthquake is impressive.
I was just going to say, what measures should be mandatory in earthquake-prone areas? But that's like,
Well, they have certain ways of building. Like, for example, I believe the Transamerica building in San Francisco, how it comes up to like a point. There was a specific reason they designed it that way, and it was to withstand earthquakes. So there are certain ways to do that. Obviously, it involves an engineer. Maybe some, well, not maybe, some are better than others.
okay, if you haven't seen this recently, I encourage you to bring it. But I got to believe both of you have seen this recent thing with the rocket that was supposedly went up into outer space, or
Yes.
or at least high enough to be considered what would be outer space. And there were some celebrities in there. Katy Perry was in the space rocket. Katy Perry participated in an all-female Blue Origin space flight alongside Gail King and Lauren Sanchez. I don't know. Who's Lauren Sanchez?
I don't know. Is that Bezos's fiance? Maybe.
Oh, I don't know. But I have seen pictures of her, and she's got a couple missiles, speaking of which.
Maybe that's why the rocket looks the way it does.
Yeah, kind of got to make it more pointy. Upon her return, Wendy's official X account posted, "Can we send her back?" sparking a backlash over perceived misogyny. Wendy's followed up with quips, "I kissed the ground and I liked it," referring to Perry's hit song. Critics highlighted the irony of a female-branded company mocking a woman's achievement. Wendy's issued a statement expressing a ton of respect for Perry, but did not apologize. Was Wendy's humor edgy or inappropriate?
I love it. I think it's great. I think it has nothing to do with her being a woman and everything to do with her attitude and her. I mean, when she came back and she said, "I think this is something everyone should experience," is like, yeah, I agree. If
Yeah,
we
it's a little tone deaf.
Yeah, I was
completely tone deaf, her holding the flower in the sky and like looking at it like she's on all these types of drugs and kissing the dirt. Turns out she was only up there for about 10 minutes. I mean, I think that's absolutely hilarious that they said that, and that it's coming from Wendy's, who, trademark is a woman. I think it's great.
Well, first of all, you brought up the flower. Okay, if you're paying this money, whether you're paying this money or not, okay, it's an experience of a lifetime to go up into space. So if you're up there, why the fuck are you staring at a flower? Why aren't you looking out the window and taking everything in?
Well, we've done a few, how should we say, tin hat segments on going outer space. Like,
Okay, well, before we get into that, because there is something with this, by the way.
go ahead.
But before we get into that, to go back to your Wendy's thing, anybody who's ever followed or seen any posts from Wendy's knows this is right on brand. Like, Wendy's is their social media department. Kudos to them, because they're funny and they don't give a shit what they say. They'll offend and they don't care, and I think that's okay. I mean, that's what comedy is about.
Well, that's perfect segue into the second question. How should brands balance humor with respect on social media?
Do you really want my take on that?
Yeah, I want both here.
I mean, I think there's constant pushing the envelope, and the envelope just moves further and further along. So, yeah, obviously you need to be respectful to certain people. There are certain things you wouldn't come out and say, but you could skirt around it. Like I said, that's what comedy's about. If you're going to be funny, you're going to have to offend some people.
What say you?
I look at it as, my definition of humor is I only make fun of the people that I respect. So I don't know. You never really make fun of someone you're not cool with, or you don't really know that well, or they're not at least high up in your, in your brain at some point.
That's true. I saw a meme, and I don't know how true it is, but it seemed, if I tied it to my personal relationships, it's spot on. And it says a friendship is 300% more likely to last like forever if there's this constant digging, or I don't know what it was the term they used, where we're busting each other's balls. It's almost like a sign of respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, hell, some people have used that for flirtation, right? When you're courting a woman and you make fun of her a little bit, it's a flirtation thing. So it's ingrained in us to just kind of pick on people.
I like that they didn't apologize. I
yeah.
literally loathe when someone goes out of the way to do something to get this type of buzz, but then walks it back with an apology, which is 100% disingenuous. It's like, you knew you meant to say it, so don't apologize for it. Fucking stand on it.
Is it offensive? Why are they finding it offensive?
I don't mean this one in
Because
particular.
everyone's offended by something.
Yeah.
Is it because she's a woman and you can't make fun of women?
Yeah.
Or is it because it's Katy Perry?
No, I think it's because it's a woman.
It's a woman thing. Yeah.
Oh, so we just can't make fun of women is basically the...
Yeah.
Okay, but to go back to this accomplishment, and we talked about a little bit of a tinfoil conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Have you heard about it?
No.
So there's pictures going around showing this capsule that they came back in. It landed perfectly flat on the ground out in the desert
With no
dirt, nothing on it. And then they show like a SpaceX capsule, and it's the sides of it are all burnt up and everything. Now I understand they didn't go completely out of our atmosphere from, I guess it's like the very furthest they could go without going out of there. So that may have something to do with it, but there's a lot of theories floating around out there that, maybe this was kind of staged.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. All right, so because you two brought up some games, I felt that I had to follow suit. I actually liked the games. Both of those segments were my favorite parts about the show. So I'm going to try and do my best here. And this game is called Guess the Brand: Outrageous Guerrilla Marketing Tactics. So we're going to guess which company used these guerrilla marketing tactics that I'm going to read to you about. The first one, I got to be careful that I don't give the answer away here. A fast food chain tweeted, "Our beef is never frozen," and then roasted 15 competitors in 15 minutes. The outcome, the campaign garnered widespread attention, boosting the brand's online presence. The public reaction, while they enjoyed the humor, some felt it was too aggressive. Do either of you know who this company is?
Wendy's.
Yeah, that's my guess too.
It is Wendy's. Hashtag National Roast Day.
Wendy's is great.
Yeah.
When did that all start? Like, I've heard of this in the last couple of years of Wendy's always kind of doing these outrageous things, but what was the catalyst for them to start to, like, how long have they always done that?
It's been several years. Like, and they'll roast anybody. If someone says something, they'll jump in and roast them. It's funny.
I was talking to Matt before we were doing some show prep, and I said, is there ever a time where you saw a company roast their competitors that catapulted you to say, you know what? I'm going to start buying that brand now because of that marketing campaign solely.
Yeah.
Has there been a time?
Yeah, just so if you remember a few years back, you and I started looking at the marketing campaign of Pit Vipers. I'm like, we have to buy some of these just because the way
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And it started on like a Microsoft Paint.
Yeah.
And it said like, we're looking for advertisers, and they scribbled in there. I'm like, wow, that was brilliant. They screenshotted like all the, emojis and stuff on there.
Yeah.
They were just really out of the box thinking. I really enjoy that. Has there been a time where someone's done a marketing thing like that you said, now I'll never use that company?
It's a great question.
I think there has been. I probably shouldn't say because a lot of
Because of what it was for?
just because maybe it was some political beliefs or things that don't belong on this show.
Yep. All right. A brand created vending machines filled with fake dirty water labeled with diseases to guilt trip people into donating. The outcome: campaign successfully highlighted global water crisis, leading to increased donations. The public's reaction: viewers were shocked and moved, prompting discussions about clean water access. Do you know who this was?
So a brand showed vending machines with dirty water, and that prompted them to get donations.
Yeah, I think the campaign was like a dirty water campaign.
Okay.
Dasani?
No, I don't even know why they call it a brand. It's UNICEF.
I was thinking it was more of an organization.
Yeah, I should have said organization. It started off by saying brand, but again, is there a line when you're trying to create or garner attention when you're doing these social media campaigns or campaigns in general, advertising?
Well, there is a line like that. There, if you're full of shit, I mean, eventually it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah. A burger chain gave out free burgers to anyone who unfriended 10 people on Facebook. Talk about cutting ties for fries. The outcome: over 230,000 friendships were added, and the campaign was eventually shut down by Facebook. Public reaction: the stunt was seen as both humorous and controversial, sparking debates about social media relationships. Do you know what company this was?
Wow.
A burger chain.
So wait, just to get this clear, it resulted in people adding more friends?
I think they got more friends for the company.
Yeah.
So this company was saying, we'll give you a free burger if you unfriend 10 people on Facebook. This resulted in that company garnering 230,000 more followers.
And this is a chain?
Yes. Do we have a guess?
I'm going to say Sonic.
Ooh, that's a good guess. Oh man. I'm just gonna go with Burger King on this one.
It's Burger King.
Wow.
And the answer was, they call it the Whopper Sacrifice. Burger King's Whopper Sacrifice. Okay, there's two more. On April Fool's Day, this food chain claimed to have bought the Liberty Bell and renamed it. Outcome: the prank generated massive media coverage and increased sales. Public reaction: initially outraged. The public later appreciated the humor and the campaign and is now considered a classic.
I think I know it.
Yeah, me too.
Taco Bell.
It's
Yep.
Taco Bell. Taco Liberty Bell.
Yep.
Okay, last one. A soda brand once triggered a vending machine to hand out jet skis, puppies, and even a guy in a tux to open your bottle. Outcome: the campaign went viral, winning top advertising awards and boosting brand image. The public's reaction: audiences were delighted by the surprises, associating with the brand with happiness. Do you know what brand this is?
Is it a vending machine brand? What?
Soda brand.
Oh, soda brand. I'm gonna go with Pepsi.
You took mine. That's what I was gonna go with. I'm gonna be different now. Then
Yeah.
Oh wait, I actually might know.
I'm gonna be different now. Let's see.
I might know.
I'm gonna go with Sprite.
No.
Can I get one more?
Yes.
Mountain Dew?
It's Coca-Cola.
Oh, come on.
Happiness machine. So let's just wrap up the game here. What are the ethical boundaries in guerrilla marketing?
I don't think there's too many of them, other than if you're portraying yourself to, and I don't mean in a joking manner, but if you're portraying yourself to be something that you're not, disingenuous.
Okay.
So the UNICEF thing really like sticks out to me because they probably just took water and dumped a bunch of shit and it said, "Oh, we took it from here," when they really didn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So things like that where it could eventually catch up to you is one thing. If you're joking, obviously everyone knows you're joking in the end.
Do you think there's any boundaries when doing guerrilla marketing?
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're not committing a crime, defamation, someone's getting hurt in the process. Simple things. I think there should, unless you're breaking a law, I think you should be able to do whatever the hell you want.
My favorite guerrilla marketing story, without question, and you know this, is Nike.
Yep.
When was the Olympics?
1996.
In 1996. Are you aware of this?
Was this the one that was in Atlanta?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so you'll love this story. So in 1996, the Olympics were here in Atlanta, Georgia. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, there's a place called Centennial Park. And in the center of Centennial Park, they had the podium for the first, second, and third place. So anybody that received a medal would go on this podium. And Reebok paid, I think it was like $200+ million for the advertising rights, that every time somebody was on the podium to do the national anthem and it'd come up on TV, right across the bottom, it would say, sponsored by Reebok or something Reebok across the bottom. They paid big money for that. But the folks at Nike caught wind of where this podium was going to be, and they knew about the rights because they were offered it but didn't go with it, but said, well, wait, the camera angle is going to be looking right here. They went and purchased a building that's in the backdrop and put the Nike swoosh on the outside of that building.
Oh my gosh.
That cost was something ridiculous. It was a fraction of the $230,000.
It was like a parking garage, I think.
Yeah, and they might have even just leased it or something for the rights to it for like 3 weeks instead of even buying it. And when I caught wind of this story, I'm saying to myself, that's marketing genius. But some would say that's unethical because, the Olympic Commission is selling advertising rights to garner more money to maybe give to the athletes or keep themselves based on the advertising. But when somebody found out where that was going to be and purchased something in the background to kind of take advantage of this situation, one could say that they thought that might have been unethical. I thought it was genius.
Of course. I believe they also purchased a bunch of billboards around the city so that when the blimp was flying overhead taking coverage, you'd see the Nike swoosh. And then they did something with handing out flags.
Flags, yeah. Like on the backside of every flag had the Nike swoosh
Yeah.
or something like that. So when people were waving it around in the stands, it was on there.
It was brilliant.
Do Olympic athletes get paid?
I believe they get something like I know certain countries pay them. Like I'm not sure about America because I've seen it where they say, oh, so and so from China, for example, won the gold medal and they're going to get X amount of dollars. So they do get paid
After the fact
somehow, some way, based on their performance.
or sponsorships?
Well, sponsorships.
It's probably
is-
probably
has to
money
be.
through sponsorships.
I believe governments pay some of their
Not the
some
US.
governments pay their athletes. I'm not sure about the U.S. I don't believe the U.S. does. I don't know though.
I've actually seen stories where there's not only are they not getting paid, but there's certain countries, maybe even our own, where there's been some athletes that are like, man, I thought the toughest part was going to be like training and getting into the Olympics, let alone winning. But come to find out, I can't even afford to have my gold medal because they were taxed somehow on receiving this thing or any money, and they didn't have the money to satisfy the.
Well, what if you're in another country and you get a gold medal and then you come back to America? Isn't there like an import You know, you have to declare when you're on the plane and you're going to another country, and they make you fill out the pamphlet.
Yes.
You have to declare $100,000.
You almost would think there'd be exceptions for that, but
Yeah,
I don't think there was.
The government's got to get its money. You know that.
Absolutely, hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, I want to end this with a segment called Story Time. And Jason, I would like for you to scour through all the different jobs and things that we've come across in the last 22 years down here, and any story that kind of sticks out to you that might be relatable to people out there. You just never know what you're going to see. You go to these job sites and you're put into a certain situation that there's just got to be something that sticks out to your head that you just never forget.
I will tell you a story. You're not sitting on my lap, though. So there's a lot of things that we can control in business. There's also a lot of things we can't control. And I remember, this is several years ago, it was a shower door job. Customer called us and their shower door was too tight. It was rubbing on the tile wall. And so there just wasn't enough space in there. And I think it was just a single door. There was a wall on each side of it. So there wasn't much you could do. So our solution, we had a local partner here in town who had a polishing machine. So if we were in a bind, we could sometimes call him up. If he was at his shop, he would take that glass and he would run it through the polisher for us. So we called him. He happened not to be there. The homeowner was actually going to be leaving anyway. So we were going to take this piece of glass out and we were going to shave it down so that it was a little bit smaller in width. So it runs through a polishing machine, takes a little bit off. So because he wasn't there, we went and we left the piece of glass there. And when I say we, it was one of our installers, and put a piece of tape on it with the customer's name. So the customer in this case, try not to laugh, their last name was spelled B-A-H-L-S, balls. So,
Oh man.
work got done. Guys went back. They reinstalled the door. I, as a supervisor, get a phone call one day from a very unhappy Mrs. Balls. And she says, everything fit and it's working great, but when we take a shower, you need to come see this. I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to watch you take a shower. She says, no, you need to come see this. So get out there. She turns on the shower. It starts to steam up. When we left that piece of glass there, once it was done, this local partner of ours wrote on it with a permanent marker and said, "Your balls are shaved." Now that cleans off of the glass. That's not a problem. But the problem is when it steams up, it still shows. So the customer
whole
was in the
glass steams
shower.
up, but it doesn't steam where that ink kind of get onto the pores of the glass.
Right. So the customer's in the shower and they, kind of washing their hair, and then they look over and they see a blatant, making fun of their last name.
Which that actually wasn't the case. They were just, because in a stack of glass, would it just say, like, once it's shaved, you'd put the name of the customer and you put shaved?
Yes, but this
man.
particular one, the partner was unaware, was really being unaware and thought he'd be funny and write, "Your balls are
because
shaved."
he put your before.
So now the customer sees it, and I had to go deal with the customer.
So you're there, you're looking at the door, you're like, there's nothing wrong. This is perfect. What could this crazy woman be bitching
yeah.
about? She reaches in, turns it up to full blast hot, says, "Just wait a minute," and it starts to build up steam. The glass fogs up, except for one spot. It says, "Your balls are shaved."
if I could have jumped through the window, I would have.
Matt, you haven't been here very long. Is there any wild stories that you're aware of that stick out to you?
Nothing out of the ordinary. A lot of characters. But I do have a kind of funny story from a previous job.
Yeah, let's hear it.
When I was up in Tallahassee for college, I worked at a Jimmy John's as a delivery driver, making, $5 an hour. Maybe $5 an hour while delivering $8 an hour while in the shop making the sandwiches. So we had our fair share of customers that were a little ridiculous. And there were times that we forgot something in the bag. So we, on our own dime, would have to drive out and maybe give them a bag of chips, or we forgot a sandwich or a pickle or something, along those lines. But we had this one customer, and I remember this very specifically because I quit the next day. But we had this quit, not 2 weeks either.
I'm done.
You're not gonna find that on my resume.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to
quit.
hear. Okay, what
Okay.
happened?
We delivered a sandwich to this gentleman who lived 20 minutes from the store, which, like I said, I'm only getting paid $5 an hour while I'm driving to drop off the sandwich. So that's, I've only made like maybe $2 driving to this guy. So I drop off the sandwich. We get back and we get a call. This guy had decided to open up his sandwich, pull out every individual tomato slice, measure them with a ruler on their, I don't know what you want to call it, radius. And he said, these tomatoes are too small. And at the time, my manager was a huge we're all college kids. We're all huge pushovers. We're just, living in this world where all these adults are telling us, come get me better tomatoes. But so my manager turns to me and he says, well, you're going to have to go give him a Ziploc bag of 4 tomato slices that are, bigger.
Drive all the way back out there. So you already did 40 minutes, 20 there, 20 back.
Didn't get tipped the first time, and I'm definitely not getting tipped the second time. And I said, are you sure? And he looked at me and said, yes, you have to do this. And I go, okay. So with a smile on my face, gave him the tomatoes and went home the next day, clocked out, went home the next day, and just quit.
I don't blame you.
I
That's
said
ridiculous.
right there, I probably will never. Everyone's got to work those grunt jobs as college students and whatnot. But right then and there, I said I definitely won't be working for a fast food chain ever again. And here we are.
That's wild.
Yeah,
I'm glad you clarified that, because the way this was starting, I thought Matt was going to show up and be like, hi, I'm Matt, and I got your pickle.
the pickle wasn't big enough.
So I've got hundreds of stories, but the one that probably stands out most to me has to do with Corey Levy.
Oh, yeah.
Who measures, at the time was measuring in people's homes. So people would come in and book an appointment or call over the phone and request someone to come out and measure their enclosure. And here in Naples, most of our customers are older, definitely older than us. Corey gets to this house, knocks on the door. Sweet little old lady answers the door and says, hey, listen, just so you know, before you come in, my husband, he's got dementia and, everything's fine, but, just stay close to me, follow me. There won't be any problems. Walks in the door, staying right behind the woman, walks in through the living room, down the hall, heading to the master bath. And you got to go into the bedroom before you get to the master bath. And she's walking in front of him maybe 4 or 5 paces, and he hears her say, oh, honey. And Corey immediately stops. That was an immediate red flag. I'll just wait a minute. She's like, no, hold on a second. So it was obvious there was someone in the bathroom. Only about 6 or 7 seconds went by. No noises of like toilet flushing or anything. And Corey hears woman say, it's okay, come on in. And he's like, I could just wait a minute, because it was obvious to him, whatever she saw in there, it wasn't gone. There was no way things had finished, because there was no noises, no movement. Everything was still status quo. And he's like, I'll wait. She's like, no, it's all set. Come on in. It's ready for measurement. And he goes in. So when he walks into the bathroom, the shower's on the right. He can see out his peripheral to the left, but doesn't look. And what happened was, the old man was sitting on the toilet taking a shit, but she had took a sheet and put the sheet and covered it over him while he's sitting on the toilet. So Corey comes in the bathroom and says, the shower's right there. You could just measure it.
Stop.
And as a true professional, Corey did measure. He said it was the longest he ever held his breath. He held his breath the entire measurement, measured the shower, and met the woman in the kitchen, ended up closing the deal. So I do have to give him credit for doing that. But that story gets me. I swear I tell it every time at a Christmas party, when I'm asked about different things. And that one really takes the cake for me. Just, he knew that when she first went in, they're like, oh, I didn't know you were in here. He's like, oh, You know, because we've all done that. We've gone into people's houses when they're there, and it's real. I don't want to say it's uncomfortable, but you're very situationally aware of what's going on because you don't want to walk in on somebody. You don't want to see something you're not supposed to see. And you're just kind of in tune with all the dynamics that could be happening there. So when he realized someone was in there, he was like, no, I'll wait. And she's like, oh, no, it's fine. Come on in. and the guy's covered in a sheet while he's sitting on the toilet. It was just... I can see it in my brain. I wasn't there, but I can see it.
Yeah, I'm thinking like that would have been a great Halloween costume.
Yeah,
Got a couple eye holes in there and rock and roll.
That's hilarious. I'm a ghost growing a tail. Well, I hope everybody enjoys this new segment on Trade Talks. I know I have. We post this on our YouTube channel called Glass Guy. Please subscribe, like, comment, share. And without further ado, until next time.
See you then.